Hey, what's going on, everybody? Jake Wilson here, back at it again with Fantasy Football Fever, episode 5. After a fun week 4, it's time to talk about fantasy football with the one, the only Andrew Brown from Durham, North Carolina. Andrew, how you doing today, man? It's been a while.
Doing good, Jake. Yes, sir. Thanks for having me back.
Ain't no problem, man. First off, I kind of want to pick your brain a little bit, Andrew. Looking at this last week in fantasy, is there anyone that stuck out to you?
I think there's a lot of things that stuck out to me. The Bills are back. Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen connection is back in action, something that we were all waiting to see. Achane is the real deal, in my opinion. I think the Miami Dolphins still going to be a juggernaut, even though they slid a little bit against the Bills, but I think they're going to be good. And then the rookie quarterbacks are really shining in Anthony Richardson and C.J. Stroud. 300 yards in every game Stroud has played in. He's been awesome to watch, and then Anthony Richardson is just running over everybody. And his arm is doing a little better than I thought as well.
Yeah, when you talk about these young quarterbacks, my girlfriend actually brought it up to me the other day that, this is the new era. Like you can feel it this year in football that this is the new era of the NFL. You think about it, the older quarterbacks in the league, Kirk Cousins, Russell Wilson, guess what? They were drafted in the same year as Andrew Luck and RG3. Like it's just mind-boggling to me that those are the older quarterbacks in the league. And then you think of all these franchise quarterbacks. You go to the 2017 draft with Mahomes and Watson. You got 2018, you got Baker. I just think it's really crazy to see these quarterbacks in the new era of football. And CJ Stroud, man, he looks phenomenal. Like this is somebody I really missed on because I thought he was going to be terrible, but that dude's really playing his heart out, and he's taking all the critics personally. So I think that's really cool to watch. And you said Anthony Richardson. He's been banged up a lot this year, but I think he's finally catching his strides and turning into that franchise quarterback that they drafted in Indianapolis. So today we're going to try something a little different. Last week we did overhyped, underhyped, or just right. This week we're going buy, sell, or hold. So we got 6 players. Andrew and I have one each. We're going to talk about a player that we are buying their stock, a player that maybe has not yet broke out, maybe a player who's been underperforming, but they're going to start performing to their ability, or players on the waiver wire. So we're going to talk about buying with them. Then we talk about hold. Hold is for players who maybe have not broke out yet, or maybe just have not been playing to what they're capable of. And so those are players that you're like, I don't expect them to do too much, but I would hold. I wouldn't sell their stock just yet. And then lastly, sell. These players are done for this season. You should probably look to trade them. And so I think this is going to be pretty interesting. Andrew, you ready, my man?
Let's make it happen.
All right, perfect. So let's dive into the buy section. So who are you buying, Andrew?
So for me, we talked about him a little bit already, but my buy is going to be Anthony Richardson. We just talked about those rookie quarterbacks. I know sometimes it is a little scary starting a rookie quarterback for your fantasy team, but I think this guy is truly the real deal. I know he's coming off a top 5 scoring week, but I still think he's going to be undervalued. He's averaging the second most fantasy points per game as a quarterback. He's a monster on the ground, and he's throwing way better than I thought. He truly reminds me of like a Derrick Henry with an arm. He's really fun to watch. And then when Jonathan Taylor comes back for the Colts, it's going to open up a little bit more for him as well. So for my first buy, I'm going to take Anthony Richardson.
I really like that pick. I really like that pick. And not just because I'm a Colts fan, but this guy, as you said, has been averaging what is it, 20 something points a game. Like it's absurd, especially as a rookie. I think what's really
Right.
going to get you in fantasy football is the running ability by this guy. He's had a rushing touchdown in every game that he has played. In week 2, where he only played a quarter and a half, he had 2 rushing touchdowns and 2 drives. Like this guy is lethal on the ground. I think he's a mixture of Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson together and has the cannon like Josh Allen. So I think this is a really, really interesting quarterback prospect, but also he's just going to continue to grow in Shane Steichen's offense. Josh Downs is only going to get better. His connection with Michael Pittman's only going to get better. I have a sneaky thought or sneaky opinion that the Colts are going to be trading for a wide receiver before the trade deadline. And I feel like if they can get a top 5, top 10, top 15 wide receiver next to Michael Pittman Jr. and Josh Downs, that this could be a very scary team, and Anthony Richardson could lead this team to the playoffs. And you mentioned having Jonathan Taylor in the backfield is going to be huge for this Colts offense. I think teaming them up in that run pass option and the option game is going to be scary if I'm in the opposing defense. Jonathan Taylor is a guy who, when he's healthy, is a top 5 running back in the league. And they're not going to only be worried about Jonathan Taylor. They're going to be worried about Anthony Richardson. The only critique I have about Richardson is last week, his completion percentage was not good. 44% of his passes were complete. Now, not all of that is his fault. You had some drops from Alec Pierce and Kylen Granson. I think another critique that I'd like to bring up as well is the guy has not been staying healthy. He's got to learn how to take hits. Again, in Jacksonville, he got knocked out of the game. In Houston, he got the concussion, didn't play week 3. And then last week, he got stepped on, which wasn't his fault. He got stepped on by one of the linemen and tweaked his leg a little bit. That is the only worry I have about Anthony Richardson. But, man, like you said, Andrew, when he's on the field, this guy's legit. So I love the pick for buying Anthony Richardson stock. All right, now the player that I am buying their stock of. This is a guy who had a great week 4. Not a lot of people have heard about him. He has the same last name as me. Michael Wilson from the Arizona Cardinals. Now people are like, whoa, hey, take it easy. Like, he's only owned in 0.3% of leagues. I think that Michael Wilson is going to be a solid pickup in your fantasy league if you do not know what to do in the waiver wire right now. Coming off of a huge game with 7 targets, 7 receptions, and finished with 26.6 points in PPR. Now, yes, week 1, week 2, week 3 were subpar for him, only averaging, it looks like, 7 points a game. But the targets are just going to continue to rise for this guy. I like what Jonathan Gannon is doing in Arizona. Yes, a lot of people think he's a shitty coach, including myself, but he has the team rallying behind him. I think Josh Dobbs is doing well with what he had, joins the team in 2 weeks, starting week 1 against the Washington Commanders and almost beats them. And then they go and beat the Cowboys. So I think with Josh Dobbs, if Joshua Dobbs continues to be the starting quarterback for this team, like unless Kyler Murray comes back or maybe they want to see what Clayton Tune can do, he's going to continue to find Michael Wilson downfield. 7 targets last week was huge. You finally got to see the potential of this guy. A lot of people were talking about him before the draft, like, this Michael Wilson kid could be pretty good. I think the Cardinals have found their number 2 receiver along Hollywood Brown. And when you look at his upcoming weeks, you got Cincinnati, who's been struggling, the LA Rams, who, listen, you got Russ Yeast, Kobe Durant, like, who are those secondary players? And then Seattle had a great night last night, but they have been struggling this season in their passing defense. So those are 3 matchups where I think they could underestimate this Cardinals offense and Michael Wilson could pop off.
Yeah, I think Michael Wilson's a good pick. He's done better every week in fantasy points, better in targets, better in yards, and he finally broke out with those 2 touchdowns last week. I like that pick.
All right, so that was our players to buy. Andrew, which player's stock are you holding on to?
I'm going to hold on to Devon Achane. I think this is the rookie running back that everybody's talking about right now. He was a huge waiver wire pickup a few weeks ago. And I'm sure Achane owners everywhere are getting offers in pretty much every league. But I think he's a hold. He's coming off 2 huge games as a rookie back, so his price tag is a little high to buy. However, I think he will continue to put up numbers in the RB2, RB3 range for the rest of the season. I know Mostert's been doing well too. He's still going to get his share. Last week showed that Mike McDaniels was going to play the hot hand. After Mostert lost his fumble, that's when Achane really, took off. And then Jeff Wilson's also coming back from injury here pretty soon, so I think he's going to get a little bit of a share. But as far as what I'm seeing, everybody on the team likes Devon. The coach likes Devon. And Devon looks really good playing. And while I'm not one yet personally, who likes a crowded backfield, I think this is one of the best scoring offenses I've seen, and I'm holding Achane, and I'm happy about it. And I'm looking forward to the rest of the season.
Yeah, you said it, man. This is a running back by committee right now in Miami. You got Jeff Wilson coming back off of IR. Raheem Mostert had a great first 3 games, but last week he only had 5 points in fantasy football. I think Achane is a guy who's just going to continue to get better. When you have a game with 51 points and then you come back with 27 the next week, I mean, this guy is just going to continue to see touches. I think he's probably the most explosive player when it comes to their running back room. And when you're Mike McDaniel, I mean, you got to be like, hey, this is our number one guy. So I think it's going to take a couple more weeks for them to finally announce that Devon Achane is their number one back. But I love what I see out of him, and I think he's going to continue to be a great running back.
Yeah, and you got to think too. He scored the 50-something fantasy points in the game. They scored 70 as a team. Dolphins only scored 20 points last week, and he still got 27 fantasy points and gave some carries to Mostert. So for the rest of the year, I think he's going to be great. But I do think he's a hold. I wouldn't sell him high right now, and I wouldn't buy him low.
Let's move on to someone else who is on that Dolphins team. I think you need to hold Jaylen Waddle stock right now. Jaylen Waddle has not been explosive this year at all, but you look at his points. You got 11.8 points week 1, 12.4 points week 2, did not play week 3, which sucks because they beat the crap out of the Broncos. And then last week, 8.6 points. A lot of people are like, man, Waddle is not him anymore. Waddle's not this guy. Tyreek Hill and this running game are going to take away looks from Waddle. The next 2 weeks, the Dolphins play the New York Giants and the Carolina Panthers. You're telling me Jaylen Waddle is not going to break out in one of those games. I think that next week is the week to start Jaylen Waddle. No touchdowns on the year yet. He's averaging 5.5 targets a game. I mean, come on now.
I love me some Jaylen Waddle. I have him in a couple different leagues. I'm not even getting impatient with him really. I know some of that's going to happen, and he's gotten hurt, sat out a game, the big game that they played when they did score 70. But I think, again, I've said it many times on this podcast already. I think the Miami Dolphins are one of the most potent offenses I've seen in a long time, and Jaylen Waddle's going to get his. It's just a matter of time. And I agree. I think the next 2 games, he's got a real good chance to break out.
Yeah, he's only projected 13.7 points next week, which according to Fantasy Pros is the wide receiver 10. But I really do like that matchup next week. So if you have Jaylen Waddle on your team and you're like, man, he hasn't been performing, I think that could be a big mistake to leave him on your bench. All right, so we talked about our buys. We talked about our holds. Andrew, which player are you selling?
All right. When I think of buy, sell, hold in fantasy and fantasy trades, you have to look at value. And this is a pick that a lot of people probably aren't going to like. But my sell this week is going to be Puka Nacua. This rookie has taken the league by storm. He's breaking records. He's number 2 in receiving yards with 501 yards on the season through 4 games behind Justin Jefferson, who was the overall number 1 pick in everyone's draft. He's number 1 in targets. With Devontae Adams sitting right behind him with 52 targets and 39 receptions. He's got similar stats to what Cooper Kupp's last full season was. So Matthew Stafford likes him. Cooper Kupp likes him. They've been having that famous breakfast they have before every game together. However, I do think this is unsustainable for the rookie receiver to continue this, especially with Cooper Kupp coming back. And I think he's going to be healthy when he gets back. Matthew Stafford loves that little inside route, and I think Cooper Kupp's going to take a lot of that. I like Puka. I think Puka's still going to be great in fantasy. I still think he's going to be, 10, 15 fantasy points a week pretty reliably. But again, as I said, I think you got to look at buy, sell, hold, and value. And I think right now, Puka's stock is as high as it's going to get for the entire season coming off this game where he got his first career touchdown. And he had 31.3 PPR fantasy points this week. So again, I think this is as high as he's going to be able to go for. So I think you can get, pair him with a mediocre running back and get one of the top 5 wide receivers. And then you don't even have to worry about what happens when Cooper gets back. So my sell this week is going to be Puka Nacua.
Man, I don't know if I can get with you on this one. I do think with Cooper Kupp coming back that it's going to, defect his targets, but I think he's done enough in these first 4 weeks to earn Matthew Stafford's trust. And that's big. You think about it. Cooper Kupp, if he's getting double coverage or if he's getting the number 1 corner on the other team, that's going to leave space for Puka Nacua to get open. I do agree with you when it comes down to Cup is definitely going to get the looks now. Puka's not going to be the number one target unless Cup just keeps on getting injured. And also, I have to agree with you on his stock is going to be as high as it's ever going to be right now. So if you are looking for someone like you're in dire need of a running back and somehow you picked up Puka Nacua in week 1 on the waiver wire, or you were in dire need of maybe, a game changer on your offense, I wouldn't hesitate to try to send a package away with Puka Nacua in there because his stock is so high right now. You don't want to miss out. So if you are looking to trade Puka Nacua, this is the week to do it.
And I also want to add too, like I said, I still like him. So if you're still going to hold on to him, I think that's perfectly fine. Even when Cooper Cup does come back, like Jake said, he's still going to get some play. That can be shown with Tutu Atwell's numbers have been pretty good so far, and I do like Puka better than Tutu. So like I said, when Cooper comes back, Puka will be a serviceable number 2 as well.
All right, and last up, my player to sell. A lot of people might have a problem with this, but I'm going to go with T. Higgins for the Cincinnati Bengals. This has been one of the craziest surprises this season. The Bengals starting out 1-3. Burrow looks like a shadow of himself, and this offense is so one-dimensional. I can't even bear to watch a Cincinnati Bengals game, man. Their only win is coming against the Rams, and that game was a snooze fest, and somehow they won because they sacked Matthew Stafford like 8 times. T. Higgins has gone off for 28.9 points this season in week 2. Other than that, in those other 3 games, he's averaging 2.7 points. Are you serious? Week 1, 8 targets, 0 receptions. Week 3, 8 targets, 2 receptions. And week 4, 4 targets, 2 receptions for 19 yards. Well, guess what, guys? Now he's got injury problems. And I don't know if T. Higgins is going to play to the ability like he did 2 or 3 years ago or even last year. Yes, they play against Arizona coming up. They play against Seattle. And then they go to the bye where he could get healthy again. I think this schedule is just kind of brutal when you look into it. At the beginning of the season, you could have thought, man, some of these are cakewalks. But Houston's a good team, week 10. You got Baltimore week 11, Pittsburgh week 12, Jacksonville week 13. They play against Indianapolis, and, they've been pretty hot this season as well. Then you also have to play against Kansas City week 17, and then to finish the season, you have Cleveland. If I am the Bengals, you need to win the next 3 games. And that's a must for this team to make the playoffs. And with T. Higgins, you have to get, stick him, maybe some new gloves. But this guy has not been able to catch a cold when he's been getting targets this season. So if you're T. Higgins right now, I think, first off, worry about getting healthy. But you got to earn Joe Burrow's trust again because how he's been playing in the first 4 weeks of the season has been rough. So if you have this guy on your team, I would be worried. But this could be the week to trade him. So if you have T. Higgins on your team, I would try to trade him for a running back, trade him for maybe a more reliable receiver, but stop banking on this guy's upside because I do not see it getting any better.
Yeah, as much as I like T. Higgins, I've been watching him since he came out of Clemson. It's been a rough go for him this year. Like you said, the drops just keep adding up. Joe Burrow's not feeling great, and as we can see, the Bengals' record's pretty rough. I think it's a good sell. Maybe wait for him to go off one of the next 3 or 4 games, see if he can get a touchdown. But I agree, I would sell him as high as you can and as soon as you can.
Perfect. So that is it for Fantasy Football Fever today. If you guys have any questions or any comments, please leave them down in the comment section. We love to hear feedback from the community. We want to give a huge shout out to Ethan Buchanan for winning our jersey giveaway. We'll be having some more in the future. So guys, like and subscribe to our video so you could be entered into a future giveaway. But that is all we have today. Andrew, I appreciate you so much, my man.
Thanks, Jake. Love you, dude.